serious, young Redditors, how do you plan on not being like boomers when you're old? When I was younger, I always found it confusing why adults couldn't use or understand the latest technology. I aim to stay current with technological trends and not settle into a mentality that hates change. When we're older, we'll have our own flaws different from the last generation. I'm intrigued to see what things we accept in society without thinking that the younger generation will fight to change. It amazes me that societal opinions change so much faster than individuals. I haven't even decided if I'm planning on being when I'm old. I don't want to treat people like older people treat me. I'm going to try and let younger generations grow and be open to positive change. Holy shit, I love this question. I cannot wait until I am on my deathbed and the younger generations are complaining about how the Gen Z assholes fucked the world up. By the way, boomers said the same shit about those before them. It is a hilarious cycle that most people choose to ignore because they are so fucking obsessed with tribalism. I'm at the younger end, a boomer. You are right. What do y'all think the hippies were protesting? They hated the older generation and the way they governed. So much unrest in the 60s. You didn't start the fire. You're one of the real ones, pie lady. Don't go changing for nobody. Thanks. My kids think I'm alright too. I honestly agree it's time to hand over the reins to the younger generations. Please be kind to the planet and everyone on it. We really only wanted to make the world a better place. Didn't mean to mess it all up. There is an ancient Chinese writing from circa 430 BC complaining about how the younger generation is messing everything up. Pretty sure this generation rivalry thing is an eternal human trait. Same thing I do now, shut up when I don't know what I'm talking about. The amount of people I have come across during this pandemic that don't know what they're talking about but their brain is directly connected to their mouth is frustrating. It's like they don't have a fully formed opinion or idea or thought, but they have to say something. So they must quote whatever stupid thing some other idiot said. Accept that you are old and embrace change. I won't be mean to retail workers and waiters. I know they are just trying their best. You are sorely mistaken if you think this is a boomer thing. It's an asshole thing, which does not limit itself to any specific generation. I work in food, and from my experience, boomers get an overly bad rep. Old people are usually either very sweet or just normal. I work fast food, so we don't always get tipped. But when I do, it's usually boomers that tip me. Rude people are a personality thing because I've had people young and old and in between be mean to me over stupid stuff. As an older person, over 60, I find it interesting that so many people seem to think older people can't learn, change, or keep an open mind. You are associating with the wrong older people. As somebody, 21, currently living with my grandparents, currently both 80, I have evidence that at least some older people actually cannot learn or change. I can say the same about many of my other friends' grandparents as well. And they all range between 55 to 85. I get that not literally every older person is going to act this way. But from what I can tell, it's a vast majority. Maybe my experiences are just a coincidence. But I can't say. I plan not to unfairly stereotype whole generations by a simple meme. Oops, too late. Not be racist. You may want to look up what people actually did in the 60s. Plenty of white kids, boomers, got their heads bashed in fighting for civil rights, and every bit as bloody as now. Instead of getting mad at my kids for not embracing my traditions, I'll encourage them to make their own traditions. I think we will all one day be the old boomers of our time. Maybe more progressive than the current boomers, but our current progressiveness will likely seem like some horrible conservativeness to our future generations, since morality and traditions change. Social norms go in cycles. Like the business cycle, things don't move continuously in one direction. What many people don't get is that the current progressive trend could reverse, whether due to religious revival or new understanding of disease processes, or just changing tastes. Much of what the current generation calls progress could be undone. At that point, people who continue to believe that progressive equals good will sound just like boomers do now in the way they're received by the next generation. Imagine, for example, that it became scientifically accepted that screen time before age 16 must be prohibited. Maybe it's psychologically damaging or causes brain tumors or whatever. People who grew up with it would scoff and belittle the new ideas and insist they know better, because they know their own experience contradicts the new ideas. A religious reawakening would be much more stark. It's unlikely, but something like it. In terms of society's stance on music, or transportation, the environment, living standards, is not out of the question. Good points. We did have a big religious awakening during the Reagan years, for example. This is the most honest answer so far. Honestly, the kids these days versus the old people or dinosaurs mentality isn't new or unique to just the generations around today. To think we will be viewed any differently in the eyes of the generations to come is just egotistical. We can only hope that the problems blamed on us are slightly less severe than the previous generations. Well, for starters, I plan on not living at Nellis Air Force Base. Ring-a-ding-ding, baby. No one plans to be worse as they age. We're all just a product of our time and get set in our ways as we age. Happens to everyone. One day a youth trend will come along that seems weird and stupid to you, and at that moment you'll realize that you are old now. The passage of time waits for no one. Fuck, TikTok already seems stupid to me and I'm 20. And then you remember that the trend is just a repackaged version of the thing you were into, and your thing was hated for the same reason. Like, the discourse currently dictates that Fortnite is that cringy game that cringy kids play. But that's exactly what we said about Minecraft a few years ago. And yet the discourse dictates that that game is good. Actually, trademark. Happened with Call of Duty. Happened with Halo. Happened with World of Warcraft. And it will happen with Fortnite. Honestly, by just keeping an open mind, I've noticed that almost all people who have strong beliefs in the boomer age group have become set in their beliefs, but if you keep an open mind, you can alter and change your beliefs to the climate of today. Step 1. Don't be a cunt. The end. Trust me, you will become old and like a boomer. No doubt about it. I'm 46 and thought I wouldn't be like older people, but alas, it happens. I really hate this stereotype meme. Maybe I shouldn't take it so personally, but my father is a boomer and he doesn't fit this stereotype at all. The things about him that I don't want to be like have nothing to do with the fact that he's a boomer. There's also things about my mother, not a boomer, that I don't want to be like when I'm old. However, there's plenty of good things about both of them that I admire and hope stick with me as I age. There is this crazy cycle with generations where they blame us, those lazy, ungrateful millennials, Gen Z, and we blame them, those racist and inconsiderate boomers. But the fact is, we all end up in the same shoes in the end. We all get old. Stop blaming an entire generation for problems that all of humanity helped to create. Sure, there's bad people out there, but I wholeheartedly believe generation has little to do with it. I know a lot of good and kind older people who mean a lot to me. Instead of negatively thinking about all the things that make me different from them, I try to think about all the things I can learn from them. And I respect the life they've lived. So to answer the question, I'll take from them the things they've taught me that are useful and good. And I'll try to be as good a person as I can be. Which is what I'm sure they did with the generation before the monsieur. A few people I could reply here to. I chose you. Seems a very well thought out post. A friend of mine, 50 now, told me the house he grew up in never had indoor plumbing until he was 18. Not a boomer. They pooped in a privy behind the house and hauled their own water. 365. He told me how painful that was in Indiana snowstorms. We all have our own story to tell. He's successful now, because he put in the effort. But my fervent hope is that his grandchildren take away at least this one thing: it's nice to poop indoors. I wouldn't have a problem being like my boomer grandmother when I'm old. We will be significantly poorer than the current crop of retirees. I try to touch my toes every day to maintain that flexibility. I try to appreciate younger generations every day for the same reason. Kids that grew up with Snapchat and Vine, or TikTok, as common for their early adolescence, are so funny in ways that I could never even begin to imagine being funny. And they have all new ways of impacting social movements. I just need to keep seeing the good. I do the same. I have my little cousins that I used to babysit that were born right before 9/11 ND. It's crazy how much knowledge they took in growing up around all of us. They are the youngest, as far as my cousins go. And being twins, they are absolutely amazing and different on what they believe in. I find it amazing how they have different thoughts on things but believe in the same humane thoughts. But it's funny because one got into the gang lifestyle and the other is going to Harvard next year. It's crazy. I should say both are successful now school-wise, keeping an open mind and not living in a cable news bubble for 12 hours a day. In large sweeps, this is easy to answer. Different cultural beliefs, maintain cultural know-how, etc. However, it's also very hard to avoid, as what it really entails is, between the age of 25 to 55, don't develop any habits. Because whatever habit you have at 60 plus, odds are, you're not going to be too interested in learning a new tech habit, mostly inhabited by the young, that already does what you already know how to do, only slightly more convenient. VCRs and DVDs players, for example. While some boomers are streaming things, etc., if it involves setting up themselves, a DVD player is as far as they'll go. We'll be doing that only with devices or apps or updates to various things rather than big pieces of hardware. TL. Doctor. Once you start enjoying a particular item, app or development, it can eventually turn into the thing you won't let go of. And by then, you won't care if people 40 younger than you don't like it. I'm mid-40s and remember thinking in my teens that I would keep up with music and trends and be outdated when I was able of 30. But it's exhausting to learn something new, master it, then dump it and start over, and over, and over. So now I understand I've already navigated multiple eras of what was on trend. It's not that important to me anymore. Never stop learning. I feel like my dad's parents have long stopped learning about anything, and it's infuriating. For example, my grandmother has a $1,000 phone, but still pays for AOL. What? Well, like, damn, really? Lol. I'm gonna try my best to be accepting of non-conforming genders and sexualities. I want to live a life where I love people more than I love any kind of institution or what I want to try to hang on to. The best boomers I've met have been ex-hippies, or at least understood that loving everyone is the solution, more than perhaps hanging on to my ideas of right and wrong. I've found most ex-hippies to be extremely judgmental, ironically greedy, or simply never applied themselves. For a generation that took psychedelics, they seem to be the poster children for a failed generation. They were like kids who never grew up. If you listen to the music from the 60s, the boomers were making the exact same complaints against their predecessors. Bob Dylan, times are a-changing. Come, mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly agon. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand. For the times they are a-chong, and they are going to complain about us. It's inevitable, but it's the balance, experience and wisdom with youthful hope and energy. The problem with boomers is just they outnumber the younger generations, so the voices weren't equally heard. Well, our generation is fixing all the problems of the previous generations. I'm going to keep the ideals of 2020 my whole life, so I can keep standing up against bigots. #S. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.